Okay guys, so let's start over chapter number 6. Chapter number 6 is about enumeration. It's the next step of port scanning, the next step after the port scanning in fact. So we have three main things to discuss. Firstly, we'll start with the definition of enumeration. I'll discuss various steps involved in enumeration. Then we will discuss a couple of tools and couple of techniques of Windows operating system based enumeration and the next thing Unix, Linux or other kind of flavors operating system, how we can actually do enumeration on those operating systems. So starting with the definition of enumeration. Enumeration is basically where you can actually extract some more valuable information about users and their recent login onto the network. Like you can find beside the open ports and closed port and operating system, you can also find the computer name, how many account holders are there on that computer. You can also find the, it's kind of establishing active connection with that host rather than just gathering the information. So the definition of enumeration is basically it allows security professionals to extract valuable information such as information about users, their recent logins, times, how many times they actually log on, etc., etc. You can say user accounts can be found. You can find the user accounts. You can find operating system plus ports detail like port is closed or open. You can also find computer name, and even you can also find the files stored on that computer as well. So port scanning is just the port scanning is just finding operating system plus services offered by the computer, offered by host. But enumeration allows hackers to establish a remote active connection with the victim. So with the victim computer, it's kind of attacker has entered into the victim's computer. One of the most widely used tool for enumeration is NBT scan, which exploit net BIOS in fact. So one of the most commonly used tool for enumeration is NBT scan. NBT scan, it stands for net BIOS over TCP/IP. And this particular NBT scan, it comes with Kali Linux. So if you use a Kali Linux, so it actually comes with that, and you will actually use it in your labs as well, the Cengage labs in fact. Usually what exactly the enumeration attack is based on, it basically exploit net BIOS. So it, for example, if your net BIOS, it's basically the network basic input output system. For example, if you have a shared printer on your network, so you have to open your port 138, 139, and these particular port needs to be open in order to use a shared printer. And here comes the net BIOS came in, and attackers they exploit net BIOS to launch an enumeration attack. So net BIOS is basically they exploit the vulnerability to launch enumeration attack. And what is basically a NetBIOS? As I mentioned earlier, it allows a Windows computer to communicate, or you can say use, shared resources on local area network. So what are basically, where exactly enumeration falls in fact? So first step is, as you know, footprinting, collection of information about the target, gathering information about the target. Art of gathering information about the target is footprinting. The next is scanning, port scanning, where you actually find the services, you find operating system and all that. And then the next level is enumeration. Attacker has basically entered into the victim's computer. So NetBIOS, I mean, that's basically what I think I have already discussed that. So let's move to the enumerating Windows operating system. So enumerating Windows operating system, in Windows operating system, you can say after Windows 7, like Windows 8 and 10, these particular operating systems are less susceptible to the enumeration attack. But the operating system before Windows 7, like Vista, Windows XP, were more prone to enumeration attacks. Because of several reasons that we will talk about in a while, like what are basically the changes that they have done. So in enumerating, let me just put these stuff here. Enumeration attacks are less susceptible to Windows after 7, like 8 and 10. It's very hard. For example, if you use Windows 8 or Windows 10, it's very hard to actually get through. So it's not that that simple. If you have like cannot get through if you use Windows 8 or Windows 10. The types of enumeration, there are mainly 6 different types of enumeration. One is the NetBIOS that we will talk about, and we have already talked about NetBIOS. Second is the SNMP. Mostly SNMP is basically compatible with or used with the Linux operating system or UNIX operating system. LDAP, NTP, and DNS. These are different types of the enumeration attacks. In fact, our book has discussed mainly NetBIOS and SNMP, and that's what we will talk about. So let's start with the first one. NetBIOS basics or NetBIOS. As I mentioned earlier, NetBIOS, what exactly it does, it allows computers to communicate with shared devices on network. Okay, and what exactly it does, it basically allows the printers, or you can use some other servers or other services as well. So it stands for Network Basic Input Output System. Which particular ports they actually use? Port 445, 137 to all the way port 139. If these ports are open, of course, there is a chance to execute the enumeration attack using NetBIOS. And which are how to bypass the firewall and which technique. So they actually use a phenomena called IPC with a $, inter-process communication, to bypass firewall. So by using this phenomena, they can actually bypass the firewall, and this is basically the tool NBT stat space -a, and then you need to put the IP address. And if you see 20 comes in, like the number 20 comes in, it means the file sharing mode is on. Then you can actually, you can see the devices, you can see the files on the server and stuff like that. how Windows, I'll actually walk through. Of course, we can actually do that in online session. I can show you guys how the enumeration attack can be executed on Windows XP or Windows Vista, in fact. Again, the requirement is if you want to launch a NetBIOS attack, so first of all, you need to find if these particular ports are open, then they use this then they use NBT stat. Just to find whether the file sharing or printer sharing mode is on, which is basically it shows you port 20 is also on. If port 20 is also enabled, then of course you can execute the next steps. And to bypass the firewall, IPC is the phenomena to which let you bypass the firewall. What are the significant changes which made Windows 8 and Windows 10 more robust against the enumeration attack? There are plenty of changes. For the first change that Windows 8 actually brought in was secure boot. So secure boot, B-O-O-T, that's B-O-O-T. So secure boot is basically one of the significant change of Windows 7 and Windows 8. What it does to avoid rootkits. So by using secure boot, rootkits can be avoided, and this feature was added in Windows 8.1. Secondly, in Windows 8, they also introduced grub bootloader. And by using grub bootloader, you can start computer with both Windows plus Linux, or if you have Unix, you can actually run a computer, but you can run parallel computer operating system with that with your single computer. Then there is another thing which is basically called authentication. Authentication Silas. What exactly they did, and it was introduced on Windows Server 2012 to prevent pass the hash attacks. So of course automatically it stops the password cracking attacks. Enumeration can be blocked, in fact. Then another feature which was introduced on Windows Server 2012, and again it's a part of Windows 10 as well, which is called application isolation feature. So application isolation feature, which is basically Windows containers which protect the applications from being unauthorized access. So it's called the Windows isolation feature, which was integrated with Windows 10 as well, and started with Windows Server 2012, in fact. Next is, for example, let's say how this particular attack can be executed. The first step in NetBIOS is you need to open your command prompt, in fact, because you can actually use it with your Windows as well. NBT stat space -a, and then you need to put the IP address of the target, and please make sure that target machine should be on your network. Okay, and for example, if you see, after you run that, if you guys see the computer name with service, it means enumeration attack can be executed. So NBT stat is a powerful enumeration tool. It's a powerful enumeration tool that actually comes with Windows, that included in Windows. Please remember one thing, to execute enumeration attack, most of the attackers, they target the domain controller servers, like domain controllers, rather than targeting the individual computers, because if you take control of domain controllers, you can actually get more information about the connected user. So please remember, hackers usually target domain controller servers, since they store more info about the target, about the users in fact. So most of the hackers, they actually use or they target those people. One of the enumeration attack type is the null session. Again, NetBIOS. Using NetBIOS vulnerability, it allows the attacker to bypass the username and password. Okay, so and this feature was, if you still this null session attack can be still executed by on the Windows XP in fact. So null session is more significant vulnerability of NetBIOS, where attacker can make active connections without putting user login and password. So without putting username and password, they can make active connection. And again, this feature was basically it was disabled after Windows XP, but Windows XP is basically more vulnerable to that. Another command which you can directly run on your Windows computer is netview. With the netview, if you just type netview, you can see, just type net space view. You can see shared resources on a network host. So you can actually see the shared resources, shared devices on a computer, their IP addresses and other stuff. The tools through which you can actually execute the NetBIOS, rather than using nbtstat, which is intensive, or you can say command driven. In fact, there's one other tool which is called dumpsec, absolutely free. You can download, just look for dumpsec. It perfectly runs with Windows as well. If you have Windows computer, just download and you can try that. Dumpsec is basically a GUI based enumeration tool for Windows. So user can connect to server and dump the policies. So you can dump their username, password and all that stuff. And on the back end, this is basically what's going on. Null session and all that stuff is going on. Hyena is another one which is basically a professional GUI based tool for managing, but it's a paid one in fact, Windows computers or Windows based network. In fact, if you have multiple computers, Hyena will give you the deep inside of those computers. In fact, it can be used for enumeration as well. OpenVAS, NASA's, I believe we already talked about it. These can also be used for enumeration. We can gather information about the other stuff. The last thing is the enumeration in UNIX, Linux, NIX operating system. SNMP is basically the older network management tool. It can be used to view the network statistics. So it's the older network management service to view. You can see the system statistics. You can find the version numbers of the operating system. SNMP walk, it is another tool. Again, it works with only Linux and Unix. And if attacker knew the architecture, the processor architecture, like 64-bit or 32-bit, details and operating system, then they can use this tool to find vulnerabilities. And the last is the finger utility. Again, it's a very older tool, which which is outdated nowadays. In fact, it was the old tool, but it allows you to find out again, but in Unix operating system, and find out if the victim's operating system is Unix, who is logged into a system. A very simple command is basically, you can use a very simple command. So that's it about chapter number 6. Please let me know if you guys need any support, if you have any question or any issues.